Museum of History Studios. You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hey everybody, welcome to this special little edition of Addressing Gettysburg, and today we've got our buddy Jim HESSLER on to talk about something, probably one of the most exciting bits of news that you will get this year, and that is that he has released a book. Now, you may be saying, what more do we need on the first day at Gettysburg? We've already got Fonce's book, right? David Martin's book. What other ones?
The new Cutler's Brigade book.
Right. You've got the micro-histories of the first day. What more do we need? Well, I'll tell you. We need Jim HESSLER'S perspective. And it's right here in this book. It's by Casemate, or it's out by Casemate. And it's not terribly long. So it's very easily digested. And look, here's my favorite part of it, Jim.
That is your favorite part.
This is my favorite part. The dust cover is not really a dust cover, but it performs as a dust cover in that you can make it a bookmark. Look at that. Isn't that amazing, ladies and gentlemen? Jim, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. First of all, Matt, thank you. Thank you for having me again and giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for making us your first interview about the book.
Where else would I go, right?
Exactly.
Now, you remember I was going to do my annual springtime appearance here, but we made the mistake of having lunch beforehand.
Yes.
We had such a good time at lunch. You
That's
know,
right.
the laughter, the tears that always happens when we get together, and we just didn't feel like podcasting.
And we were just kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
We talked ourselves out. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gettysburg Eddies will do that to you.
It does. Right? It does do that to you. And well, yeah, I mean, you sit there and you eat those delicious wings. That's what I love about it. That's right. That was we were there for like 3 hours, I think. That was a long day. Anyway, the book here.
Yeah.
Why do we need Jim HESSLER'S take, or is it that? What is it? Why did you want to do this?
You know, fair question. The simplest answer to that is because I was asked. So Casemate, this is part of the Casemate Illustrated Campaign series. Casemate is doing these illustrated campaign studies. Ted Savis, who many of you know from Savis Beatty, he's publisher of my previous books. Ted was acting as sort of a broker on their behalf, and he approached me and he said, "Look, they want to do Gettysburg. Jim, I think this would be good for you to do, and will you do it?" So, A, I was asked, but I don't want that to sound too mercenary, because B, especially with all the Sickles stuff I do, I'd kind of gotten typecast as,
Sickles guy. Yeah.
Just a Sickles guy in some corners. I'm sure not with this amazing audience, but
because you also pick its charge guy.
Exactly. And he's Cav and Custer.
Yeah,
but
right.
I had wanted to get something first day on the resume for a while, and I kind of said, okay, yeah, let me do my take on it, because the first day does have a lot of great stories and a lot of great debates and a lot of great controversies, and that's my interpretation that I try to flavor throughout that book.
So did you do something different with like format or anything? I know there's a lot of pictures in here, which I think is great.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So as the title implies, and I can't take credit for the series formatting. I mean, this is something Casemate had already done one for Antietam and in other campaigns, but as the title implies, this is the illustrated first day at Gettysburg. Matt, my pet peeve, and we've probably talked about this, my pet peeve for a long time has sort of been the visualization of studies. You put out a great 400-page book, and the first question everyone asks is, but are the maps any good?
Yes.
I need good maps. I'm a visual learner.
Right.
And that's been my pet peeve for a long time. But
you hate visual learners is what you're saying.
No, I love visual learners. Okay. I'm just an old, stubborn, want to read the words kind of guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when this idea was kind of presented to me, you know what, Matt? If you can't beat them, join them. Exactly. I said, all right, let me do a visual book. Now, my Pickett's Charge book is super visual.
Sure.
But this is over 100 photos, color, modern, historic, black and white, stuff from the park archives, full color maps. Originally, they were only going to give me like 6 maps in the book. And I said, guys, the Gettysburg audience is much more demanding than your other campaigns. We can't. So right. I got them to put extra maps in the book. Folks, you visual learners out there.
Yes.
Not only do I not hate you, I love you and I'm thinking of you. But I think that's what makes it a really cool book. It is, in addition to the text, it's the first day in pictures.
And what is this here I'm looking at? Is this this is the order, or you got orders of battle in the middle of the book, not at the end of the book. No, I think this is great.
Okay, good. good.
I do, because I hate having to go to the end of the book and shuffle through the index and, everything, I mean, I probably could just look it up in the table of contents, but why would I do that? Here it's in the middle of the book.
And you like that?
I do like that. I could go, I could find it, I could mark it, and then I can always pop back and forth to it. Now, couldn't I do that if it's at the end of the book? Of course, but for some reason, I like it in the middle.
Like it? Well, we won't argue with that.
Because it's an important part of understanding the battle. So why would you put it separate from the story? So I like that. I don't know if that's what you guys were thinking when you did this.
We were a little bit.
Okay.
I'm making that up.
Okay.
I don't think I gave that much thought, but that'll be part of the pitch.
It's a light blue. The pages are light. You probably can't make it out too well in the camera there, but the pages are light blue, so it stands out a little better. And I don't know. I think it's a great idea.
And you know what else, Matt? People love the glossy paper. Now, as an author, do I have anything to do with glossy paper? No. Not a damn thing, but it makes a nicer book.
I think it does too. I like to either highlight or make notes in my books. And I think for highlighting, at least, I like the glossy paper better.
Okay. Yeah.
And I also, I know what I don't like glossy paper for is I like to use a heavy ink pen. I don't use ballpoint.
All right.
And so it smudges.
Yeah.
It doesn't dry. It's not as absorbent as like regular old pulp paper or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you call that, old time paper. But then the problem with that is it bleeds through on those pages sometimes.
That's true.
So,
You know what I always recommend? I always tell people, get 2 copies of my books.
That's what I do.
Write all over, smudge the other, and then keep the other one for your pristine first edition.
This will be my signed copy that goes in the bookshelf of signed copies, and then I'm going to buy the other one for notes and stuff.
Good.
No, that's what I do. That's exactly what I do. So, okay.
Could I add one more thing about the photos before we move on? Because I just want to get a sense. I told you 100+ photos, color, black and white, historic, modern, the whole 9 yards. But I want to be clear. Part of the deal with doing this book was I picked every single one of those photos. I didn't you didn't just okay, I'm done with the text and throw it over the wall and let some editor kid pick a bunch of generic photos. Every one of those photos I picked. And they try to tell the story in terms of where they're placed. So it's not just, let me look at the photo caption real quick. It's an important part of the story.
Well, and another thing is it begins with a timeline.
Yeah.
Which I also like because a lot of books, especially when they're not a general history, but a micro history of a certain action or unit or whatever, they're not always great at providing context before you start reading about it. And here you got the timeline. Right. So you got the timeline. Easy. How did they get up here to the first day?
Again, our visual learners, easy to digest.
Absolutely. And I noticed that one of the pictures on where is it here? I think it's the title page. Our buddy Rob Williams over at the seminary took this.
Seminary. A lot of names you would know contributed photos to that book. Rob Williams, Cody, Phil Spoggy, Lynn Heller, a lot of friends who I'm internally grateful to because, when I was doing a lot of this book, I was on injured reserve, shall we say. And although I contributed a lot of my own photos, folks, the iPhone 15 or whatever it is takes lovely pictures.
Yes, it does.
But there were a lot of times I could not get out to the field for various reasons. And a lot of friends, Cody, Rob, Phil, Lynn, all of them stepped up. Tracy Bear did a cool one in there that Jody, that I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah.
We got to get by with help from friends.
Absolutely.
And as always, I had a lot of people willing to help.
What I like here is this, the shot of the first shot marker. And I believe it's facing, I guess that would be northwest, the picture.
I think you're right.
And what it shows is, and it's hard for you to see here on the camera, ladies and gentlemen, but you can see there's a little orchard in the back, but you can see through the orchard.
Yes.
Which if you go there today, there's a giant forsythia bush in your way.
You're absolutely
right.
And
you can't see a damn thing. And so you go, how are they taking shots from here?
Yeah.
But none of that shit was there.
And you will see other examples of that throughout the book, again, where I specifically chose photos that said, okay, look at this clear background. There's one from Coster Avenue where you can see the town behind it. It's just crazy. And there's all kinds of examples of that. And that was, again, part of the strategy. I hate to say we're doing then and now, but people love then and now. Yeah.
Here's another one that's interesting. This is the George house.
Yeah.
With the old time photo place, right? Across from the old Dairy Queen.
Yep.
And that's what it looked like way back when. I've never seen that picture. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so you got some really good new pictures in here. Here's an example of the maps.
Yep.
Okay. Too bad I don't have scans of these. I could put them in.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have scans either. Now, I'll tell you again, I didn't physically make the maps because, frankly, I just don't know how to do that technically wise. But I did spend an excruciating amount of time with the map maker, who's, I think, a chap in London, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
I spent an excruciating amount of time with that map maker saying, nope, got to move this regiment here, move that line here, to the point where I think, he was bloody tired of hearing from this American at all hours of the day.
Yeah.
But hopefully it pays off, because again, folks, we need good maps. We love maps.
What I like about the maps here, which, I mean, other maps do this too, but for whatever reason, it struck me in this one. I don't know if it's just the design of it or not, but how do I explain it? It's just kind of like almost featureless. like you know what I mean? Like you've got the topographical lines and you have where the troops are lined up on them, but there's not much as far as like there's nothing here to indicate Sheeds's Woods that I'm looking at, right? Yeah. There's no little like fake tree drawings or whatever. Yeah. Nothing like no fence lines. It's just basically just the land primarily as God made it, and then these armies on it, which God's green Adams County, right? Yeah. So you really can't see it from what I'm showing you in the camera there, folks. But I don't know. I think I like these maps.
Yeah.
I do. Good. And also, by the way, Phil Spoggy's a good photographer. Oh, he's a hell of a photographer. Yeah. Yes, he is. He really is. I'll have to tell him. He's coming on the show in May. I know. All right. Now, listen, there's a couple of questions that you explore in here, okay? And then I'm going to go over them, and then we're going to hone in on one, because we don't want to give everything away here, folks. You got to read the book. Right. See how it ends. Big one here. Did Meade intend to fight on the Pipe Creek line in Maryland? Did the absence of Jeb Stuart's cavalry really leave Lee blind? Was Lee's desire to avoid a general engagement ignored by his own officers? That's the one I want to hone in on. Sure. Well, so when you write for the Dust Jacket, you're writing for a general audience. You're writing for the guy or gal who's going to pick it up in the bookstore and say, hey, why, what's in this book sort of thing. It's like a movie preview. Yeah. It's like a podcast trailer, right? Or that. Something like that. Excuse me. Where were we? What was the question? I don't remember. No, I forgot. Yeah. The question was Lee. Was he? Did his subordinates ignore his order to avoid a general engagement? So in a broader issue, one of the things that I started to dive into and enjoyed doing in quote unquote my interpretation of the first day is all of the command issues. Both in the Army of the Potomac, field command changes hands like 7 times on July 1st. And then you have the Army of Northern Virginia. And these are well-worn questions between Lee saying not wanting to bring on a general engagement and Ewell and Hill and all of that stuff. But I wanted to spend in particular a lot of time with Richard Ewell because I think he's been sort of stereotyped for the first day. If you were asking me who my first day MVP is, I would probably say Ewell for both sides. Because in that morning, particularly the morning, early afternoon, when he comes up onto the field and he's got those orders from Lee, as we all know, to avoid a general engagement. But Ewell comes up to Oak Hill. He sees that opportunity. To hit Doubleday's right flank, and Ewell goes for it, and he takes advantage of it. And it's those attacks from the Second Corps that are really going to drive the First Corps back ultimately to the town. We spend a lot of time too in the book, obviously talking about the 11th Corps. Barlow's Knoll has always been a sub favorite of mine because, it's Sickles of the first day. Right. Yeah. But at the same time, a lot of time with Ewell and the Second Corps, and I especially think one of the things that often gets ignored in the interpretation of the first day, we come onto the field, we do Buford, we do Reynolds, we do the Iron Brigade, we do the railroad cut, then maybe a shuffle over to the 11th Corps, and then, okay, folks, it's on to day 2 sort of thing. The afternoon attacks, where Lee
to that question, Lee actually gives permission for what Lee calls a general advance of the whole army. The afternoon attacks by Ewell and Hill against primarily against the First Corps position is something that's almost always completely overlooked.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, I'm not going to answer the question and say, do I think Lee's desire to avoid a general engagement was ignored? But yeah, it's complicated. And in the afternoon, he turns it over to a general advance, which I think a lot of people often forget about.
What about, I guess, well, what is your main argument for your answer to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think ultimately the main argument is kind of, as I said, we all know Lee is given those orders not to bring on a general engagement. But I think at the end of it, you have Ewell pushing, taking advantage of the opportunity, obviously, right up until he gets to Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill. And then what has been a good campaign, not just a good day, but a good campaign for Ewell up to that point, obviously flips over. And that's why I kind of jokingly said, I make Ewell my first day MVP on both sides, because I think early in the day, he's doing a hell of a job for the Army of Northern Virginia. And then he kind of flips it over and gives the Army of the Potomac that time to dig in.
Oh, right? so he's the most valuable player for both.
Yeah, get it, folks?
I get it. Okay, good. Yeah. How about, who would you say is the Union MVP?
On the first day?
Besides Ewell.
Yeah, good question. I think, I'm not going to say Doubleday, although I think Doubleday has a hell of a day up to a point. I know there was a lot of talk at the thing you just recorded about Howard being the MVP for the first day. I will add, and I think I give Howard a lot of credit in the book, primarily for the selection of Cemetery Hill. I'm not going to go full MVP with Howard because I think and look, folks, this is all hindsight. We're all, let's throw the disclaimer out there. It's all Monday morning quarterbacking.
Right.
But I think
none of us could do better.
Exactly. And I certainly could not manage a corps in the Army of the Potomac. But I think
I could, but
yeah, of course. But I think from the perspective of, yes, Howard is important for selecting Cemetery Hill, which ultimately is decisive in winning the battle. I don't go quite MVP on Howard, as I was saying, because ultimately in hindsight, the commitment of the 11th Corps troops north of town does prove to be faulty, and so because of that, MVP of the first day for the Army of the Potomac, you know what, I'm going to give it to George Meade.
Wow.
Because even though Meade is not on the battlefield, and that's one of the themes of the book, the subordinate officers really fighting this first day's battle, at the end of the day, it's George Meade's positioning and his headquarters and his staff work that ultimately gets the Army of the Potomac onto the battlefield at the right time. So I guess I'll give it to Meade.
That's good. I like that answer.
Yeah.
But now you touched on something else, and that is that until Lee arrives late in the afternoon, not even late in the afternoon, right? It's like probably noonish when he gets there.
I have Lee kind of getting around Hers Ridge around 2:30.
Okay, so early afternoon. Yeah. But still, a lot has happened.
Yeah.
And it has all been under the control of subordinate commanders at that point. Meade doesn't get there till late at night.
Right.
He sends a proxy under Hancock, or as in the form of Hancock later on in the afternoon. But by that point, pretty much the Union has lost the field.
Right. The day is kind of over. Right. Exactly.
Right. So Lee is the only Army commander on the field. It's kind of obvious, but do you see that when he arrives, there is a shift of any kind, or does that have an influence either way?
No, and that's actually a good question, because it kind of goes back to one of the points I briefly made earlier. We so often ignore the afternoon action. And we often tell people, well, the first day was fought without either commanding general on the field. But actually, that's not true, because Lee is here for the afternoon. And yeah, what I think you see shift is a transition from avoided general engagement to, again, what Lee says, I ordered a general advance of the Army, which is, folks, 2nd Corps and 3rd Corps, 2/3 of the Army of the Potomac. Or I'm sorry, 2/3 of yeah. What's the Ralph Siegel line? Allow me to correct myself.
Yeah.
Two-thirds of the Army of Northern Virginia is on the field and is now advancing under Lee's watchful eyes. So yeah, I absolutely think there's a shift once he gets on the field. Absolutely.
What do you think of? First of all, do you cover much of Buford in here and what he does in the morning?
I do. Obviously, you saw the first shot page. I try to put Buford into context. Again, the idea that Buford's stand has taken these legendary, mythic proportions, that he saved the Army of the Potomac and all of that stuff. What I give Buford credit for, because the book doesn't start at the morning of July 1st. We do the lead up in the first chapter. And ultimately, what I give Buford in the book the most credit for is the intelligence and the recon work.
Yeah.
That stuff that Buford is writing and telling headquarters by the evening of June 30th, that's pretty well accurate. And that helps inform Meade and the Army of the Potomac headquarters where Lee is and where Lee is concentrating. And it's one of the reasons why Meade realizes, okay, this is going to be fought at Gettysburg. So I do give Buford coverage. Obviously, his stand is he falls back then to McPherson's Ridge. But for me, the emphasis on Buford is really, to me, the intelligence and the recon work.
And then he decides that he's going to try to slow the Confederate advance towards Gettysburg. He doesn't really have orders to do that, though, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So that's just something he just takes the initiative to do
until the rest of the army can come up, and specifically in this case, Reynolds who he knows is nearby. And to that phase of the fighting, and it ties back to your earlier question about avoiding a general engagement. One of the things I do try to shine a spotlight on too is as well as the advance of the Confederate Army, Heath's division that morning. And one of the things when I was asked to do this, I'm kind of thinking, okay, is there anything new to say about the first day? But and I know, every time you go onto social media, specifically Gettysburg social media, it's a lot of the same questions still being asked and still being debated. And even something that's as silly to guys like us was the battle fought over shoes? People are still debating it.
Sure.
And so, Hill's advance against Buford's line that morning, I shine a spotlight on that. And I think, folks, shoes do play a part, but you'll have to read the book to find out. So I am not in the shoes had no part in this. But again, you have to read and find out. I'll give you a hint. I split up the June 3rd because I don't want some guy watching this on YouTube going, what an idiot. Shoes. There was no shoe factory in Gettysburg.
It's the clickbait of books.
I'm not buying that woke piece of crap. We don't want that, folks.
No, God forbid we woke it up with shoes.
But what people forget is there are two very different assignments. There's Pettigrew's assignment of June 30th. There is Heath's assignment of July 1st. One is supply gathering. One is a reconnaissance and force. It's that first one, folks, that involves shoes. So I try to clear that up. And for anybody who's watching this and says, well, that doesn't need to be cleared up, go on to any Gettysburg discussion group forum, and I would beg to differ with you.
Yeah. Okay, good. So in other words, yes, but no.
Yeah.
Or no, but yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would say in chronological order, yes,
but no. Right.
And that goes back to your earlier point. Look, this is HESSLER'S interpretation of the first day.
Sure.
If you don't want HESSLER'S interpretation, don't buy the book.
Don't get HESSLER'S book.
Well, get the book anyways, because the photos are lovely.
Give it to the person you hate the most.
No, because the photos are lovely. And
they are lovely photos. We all love photos. Phil Spoggy is a great photographer.
People make a career out of doing this on Facebook. Why not put them in an actual book?
Well, I agree. Yeah.
Right. So another example.
Now, okay. You've done July 1st. So obviously July 2nd and 3rd are coming, right?
No.
Oh.
So here's the thing. Like you, we are men of many projects.
Super busy.
I've been saying to you lately, because we get together all the time and talk about life matters and that sort of thing. I want to make sure I say this correctly. I don't want to do a lot of anything, but I want to do a little bit of everything.
Yes.
I think I said that right.
Yeah.
And so the natural assumption was I would write the illustrated second day. But I kind of said to him, guys, I'm glad I did the illustrated first day. Thank you for asking. I've already done 2 second day books. Sickles at Gettysburg, Gettysburg's Peach Orchard, still available everywhere fine books are sold, right? But I've done the second day. I didn't really want to tackle an illustrated second day. So I've recommended a friend, a mutual name, an acquaintance whose name we would both know.
Good.
I've suggested he write the illustrated second day. I'll leave that to him to announce or finalize. However, I did tell him after a hiatus, I'd be willing to come back and do an illustrated third day.
Oh, okay.
Which
third
would be...
day sounds easier.
Well, no,
no, I mean, I'm not saying it.
No,
I'm saying the third, because the wheat field is so complicated.
Illustrated second day in 130 pages. Yeah.
You can't get deep into that. Right. So you have to be able to.
Exactly. And people are going to be grumbling. This isn't fans. This
right.
Isn't
right.
So, at the illustrated third day, we obviously you got to do Pickett's Charge, but Culp's Hill, East Cavalry Field, Matt.
Yeah.
I can finally do East Cavalry writings. So.
Maybe you should do one on just East Cavalry Field.
Yeah, maybe. Well, related to that, I said to Mr. Savis, actually I call him Ted, but I said to Mr.
His first name.
I said to Ted, Ted, you keep throwing these Gettysburg projects at me. I'm not getting any younger. I've been threatening for years to do a Little Bighorn project. What about the illustrated Little Bighorn? Oh, that's a great idea. We didn't think of that.
How could you not?
How could you not?
Yeah.
And what's funny about that now is he's kind of twisting my arm a little bit. Well, Jimmy, if you don't commit to that, we're going to have to get somebody else to do it. I'm like, whoa, Tiger,
whoa.
Time out, Tiger. That was my idea.
That's my turf, man.
That's my turf, man.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, somebody else will probably do illustrated second day. I'm going to come back in, close out the game with the illustrated third day. But I think
I think you need to do that little Bighorn one. Honestly, Jim, I would like to see a more than 130 page book on Little Bighorn from you.
And that's why I hesitate to do it.
To do the book?
That's in this format. So, the other idea we've had forever is, my Pickett's Charge book, which is similar in format to this, but bigger and hardcover and footnoted and all that stuff. Right. I've had that idea forever to do that sort of format for Little Bighorn. But these books, these Case-Made illustrated, they're selling like biscuits and gravy.
Well, no, they're easily digestible, right?
Exactly.
They're not a lot. It's enough information that you'll have a good understanding of what's going on.
I hope so.
But you're not going to get bogged down with too much detail.
Right.
And there's a place for that. Of course, we love books like that.
Yeah,
those of us who really want to know. But if you just need a quick refresher, you don't even need to be new to it. A refresher, it's kind of a different way to look at things. I do like the visuals. I am one of those people. I can do both. I'm ambidextrous. I can learn visually and by reading, but I prefer visuals because I can.
That's the society we've created.
Yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, and this is probably just because I always liked movies, but I think like movies, so I want to see things so that I can, paint the scene.
Totally understand. And again, I'll emphasize these are not just random ad hoc photos thrown in. We've put them in specifically, strategically to try to tell the story. And that's the whole point of Case-Made Illustrated. And thank you, Case-Made, as I promote this series on your behalf. But,
this one here, what is this, 74th Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
I have a very similar photo because I was driving around and the sky was looking just like that.
Exactly.
This was like years ago. It's 2018 or 19. And I was like, that looks cool with that statue. And so I went and I took pictures of it.
I was trying to see if it's popping on camera.
Sorry, it's not. Thank you.
And just to be clear, that is author's photo.
Yeah, it says it right there, author's photo.
We've given our dear friend Phil a shout out many times. I want to give Lynn Heller a shout out because she contributed a lot of them too. But there are authors' photos in there as well.
There are plenty of authors' photos.
Yep.
There's Library of Congress, so it's not just cell phone pictures and people who are just running around here. You have actual photos of, here's one from Gettysburg National Military Park.
A lot of them from Gettysburg's Park Archives.
Oh, so this is looking up the Mummasburg Road. Oh, the old Oak Ridge Tower.
Yeah. Ooh.
Wow, look at that.
Oh, look at that.
It goes up a lot higher.
It would look even cooler if you showed it to the camera.
I would. I don't know if it'll translate.
Yeah, probably
It's down
won't.
here.
But it's lovely, folks. Buy the book.
You got to get the book. That's
Buy
all
the
I'm
book.
saying. That's
Buy
all
the
I'm
book.
saying. All right, where can they get the book?
So the best place they can get it, to be blunt, is my website, which is the Battle of Gettysburg.podcast.com. You know, we do have a store, and I sell a lot of books there. That would be the best place to get it. It will come directly from me. I will sign it for you. I'll inscribe it. I'll tap dance on it. I'll do whatever you want with it.
That's dedication.
I haven't kept up with what retailers are going to carry it or not. Frankly, I'm kind of at the point in life where I let them deal with that. But I will say, if you're going to go to a retailer, I know Jim Schmick, our pal Jim Schmick, Civil War and More. I know he's carrying them. I signed a bunch for him. Schmick has been super supportive of me over the years. So buy from my website or go to Jim Schmick's Civil War and More. If other retailers are carrying it, we'll let you.
Do you know, are they at For the Historian yet?
I don't know yet. I don't know. I walked by there the other day and I did not see them, but I haven't heard.
Well, let them, if they are there and you find out about them, folks, you want to get one, let them know you heard about it on this show and you'll get a discount. I forget what it is. I think it's like 20% or something.
Nice.
Good luck with the book, Jim.
Thanks for having me. Let me talk about it.
My pleasure. Thanks for making us your first interview. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Go get Jim's book. You will enjoy it.
I hope so.
And it is something that you just have to have in your library. Excuse me. That's it for us here. Thank you very much.
All right.
From Gettysburg.